there, my name is Tessa O'Connor, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the cultural World Heritage Sites in Japan and Canada. I've chosen to compare the World Heritage Sites between these two countries, partly because I'm Canadian, but more so because of the unique differences that each country has in both their historical development and the influence that different religions and spiritualities have had on their cultural development. These differences can be seen through the diverse cultural World Heritage Sites in each country and their reflection in the modern-day culture of Japan and Canada. World Heritage Sites are designated by the United Nations by meeting at least one of 10 criteria. And these designating criteria are diverse, which allows both man-made and natural sites to be considered. There's 3 types of World Heritage Sites. The first is cultural sites, which are sites designated as a result of cultural value to a population. Natural heritage sites often feature natural phenomena or sites of geological, ecological, evolutionary, or biodiversity significance. Mixed sites contain elements of both cultural and natural significance. Japan has 19 cultural World Heritage Sites and 4 natural sites, whereas Canada has 9 cultural, 10 natural, and 1 mixed World Heritage Site. This world map shows Canada in green and Japan in orange, and it's interesting to note that despite the large difference in size between Canada and Japan, Japan being the smaller country, it has many more World Heritage Sites than Canada does. We're going to take a look at both the historical influences and the religious and spiritual influences that have helped shape the designation of World Heritage Sites in both Canada and Japan. We're going to start with some of the historical influences on the designation of Japanese World Heritage Sites listed here. Pictured here is Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was the first shogun of the Edo period of Japanese history. First up is the historic monuments of ancient Nara, pictured here on the map as number 13. Nara served as the Japanese capital from the years 710 to 784. This site is comprised of 78 different buildings, and it was built based on a Chinese city model and geomantic principles. This site is interesting because it displays both a history of Buddhism and Shintoism in Japan as early as the 8th century, which kind of set the foundation for the coexistence of these religions in modern-day Japan. Another World Heritage Site whose designation has been historically influenced is Hirazumi, pictured here on the map as number 3. Hirazumi was the political center of the northern realm of Japan between the 11th and 12th centuries. It is the birthplace of the art of Japanese gardening, and it represents a fusion of these garden concepts that came from China, as well as some Buddhist practices and the nature-worshipping belief of Shintoism. The Gusuku sites and related properties of the Kingdom of Ryukyu are seen here on the map as number 19. This World Heritage Site is commemorative of the indigenous Ryukyu people in the Okinawa Prefecture in Japan, and this regime existed between the 12th and 17th centuries. People in these communities fortified their land to essentially create fortresses, which were called Gusuku. So this site represents their culture and religion. The castle of Himejijo is seen here on the map as number 10. This castle was erected during the Edo period in Japanese history, during which Japan was ruled by the Tokugawa shogunate, which was a hereditary military dictatorship. This site represents the reign of these shoguns and Japanese feudalism, as well as the intricacy of Japanese wooden architecture. The historic monuments of ancient Kyoto are seen here on the map as number 9. This collection of buildings and gardens was constructed between the 10th and 17th centuries. Kyoto also served as the imperial capital of Japan up until the 19th century. This site is really representative of the evolution of Japanese culture throughout these centuries. Here you see Hiroshima Peace Memorial as number 15 on the map. Our last Japanese World Heritage Site, whose designation has been historically influenced, is the Hiroshima Peace Memorial. It's comprised of the Hiroshima Prefectural Industrial Promotional Hall, as well as a monument that was erected in the adjacent park. This hall was the only structure that was left standing following the nuclear bomb explosion on August 6, 1945. Although this is a somber memorial for the Japanese, it is also a significant event in modern Japanese history, and it serves as a symbol for world peace and for the hope of the elimination of nuclear weapons worldwide. Pictured here is the memorial that was erected in the park beside the hall that was left standing after the explosion. Now that we've explored some of the historical influences on Japanese World Heritage Sites, such as some Chinese principles, Japan's involvement in World War II, and the development of the Japanese monarchy, we're going to take a look at Canada's sites that have been influenced by the country's history. Canada differs from Japan in that it's been colonized by different groups of people throughout its history. It was first colonized by Vikings, shown in the top picture on this slide. This was followed by colonization from the French, pictured in the middle, and then a colonization by the English, pictured at the bottom here. Many of Canada's cultural World Heritage Sites are a reflection of this colonization, as well as a reflection of Indigenous Canadian heritage. L'Anse Meadow is the first site that we're going to talk about, and it's located here on the map as C1. This site represents the first European presence in North America, as well as the Canadian Viking colonization. This site features the remains of a Viking settlement from the 11th century, and it has buildings that are covered in peat turf that were characteristic of Viking settlements at the time. These types of buildings were also found in Viking settlements throughout North Greenland and Iceland. The Vikings introduced ironworking to Canada, which is still a prevalent industry in Canada today. Occasionally, there are iron smelting demonstrations at this site where Norse techniques and technology are used to replicate how the Vikings accomplished ironworking in the 11th century. Here you can see some of these ironworking techniques at work. The landscape of Grand Pré is shown here on the map as C16, and it's located in Nova Scotia, Canada. This site is an homage to the Acadian people. Acadians were immigrants from France who settled in what's now known as Nova Scotia in the early 1600s in Canada. They were later deported by the British settlers in the mid-1700s following the English colonization of Canada. The Acadians introduced coastal agricultural techniques to Canada, such as hydraulic draining systems of dikes and aboiteaux. These techniques are still used today. This site, as well as the next one, is representative of modern French-Canadian culture. The historic district of Old Quebec is located in the province of Quebec, and it's shown here on the map at C9. The historic district of Old Quebec is a fortified colonial city that was colonized by Samuel de Champlain, a French settler, in the early 1600s. This served as the capital of New France, and then later as the capital of the British colony in Canada. This district set a precedent for subsequent settlements across Canada that were designed on the basis of European architecture and lifestyle. This is still a very predominantly French region in Canada, and it represents modern French-Canadian culture. Pictured here are some of the fortifications that are original to the settlement. Old Town Lunenburg is pictured here on the map at C11, and it's located in Nova Scotia. This town was a British colonial settlement in the mid-1700s. It was designed after British towns that have a layout of a rectangular grid pattern, which can be seen pictured here on the left. This community was designed to rely on Atlantic fishery, which it continues to do today. Our last Canadian Cultural World Heritage Site that's been historically influenced is the Rideau Canal, which is seen here on the map at C14, and that's located in Ontario. The Rideau Canal is a man-made 200-kilometer-long canal that runs from Ottawa, Ontario to Kingston, Ontario. It was modeled after European canals. Interestingly, this canal was constructed by the British in the early 19th century as they fought the Americans for control of this region. So this fight was one of the fights that helped define the Canadian-USA border. Now, the Rideau Canal is a hallmark of Ottawa, and it promotes Canadian culture, which includes ice skating and paddle sports. Pictured here are some of the fortifications of the canal, which include locks that boats have to pass through in order to enter the canal. We're now going to move on to Japanese Cultural World Heritage Sites whose designation has been influenced by different religions in Japan. Namely, we're going to talk about sites that have been influenced by Buddhism, Shintoism, as well as Christianity. The Buddhist monuments in the Horyuji area are pictured here on the map at number 12. These two temples and wood monuments are some of the earliest Buddhist monuments found in Japan, built in the 7th and 8th centuries. 11 of these original structures are still standing today, and these are actually some of the oldest wooden buildings in the entire world. This site is a fusion of Chinese-introduced Buddhism as well as pre-existing Japanese culture. The Itsukushima Shinto Shrine is seen here on the map at number 16. This shrine, which consists of 19 structures that were built in the 13th century, embodies the key Shinto belief of polytheistic nature worship. This shrine has also been really influential in the development of Japanese Shinto architecture, and the shrine itself has become a symbol of Shintoism in Japan. The sacred sites and pilgrimage routes in the Key Mountain Range are shown here on the map at number 11. These sites are located along pilgrimage routes in the Key Mountain Range. They include both Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples, which again exhibits the coexistence of Buddhism and Shintoism in Japan historically and today. Next, we have the shrines and temples of Nikko, seen here on the map at number 4. This heritage site once again exemplifies the linking of religious practices to sacred natural sites in Japan. This site is also symbolic of the first Tokugawa shogun who had it built. Worshippers continue to visit here today. The hidden Christian sites in the Nagasaki region aren't given a number on our map, but they're shown here with a red star. Although Christianity has not been prominent in Japan historically, nor is it today, it has existed, and this site bears testimony to its presence. Between the 17th and 19th centuries, there was a forced deportation and execution of Christian religious specialists. Christianity persisted despite this prohibition as Christians fled to the Nagasaki region to seek safety. Mount Fuji, our final Japanese World Heritage Site, is seen here on the map at number 6. Mount Fuji has become a symbol of both Buddhism and Shintoism in Japan. Many believe that gods and Buddhas reside at the peak, and as such, worship ascents are common. There are Shinto shrines and Buddhist structures that are established at the base of Mount Fuji, as well as along pilgrimage routes. Finally, we're going to talk about Canadian Cultural World Heritage Sites whose designation has been influenced by different Indigenous spiritualities. The graphic here indicates the Aboriginal percentage of the provincial or territorial populations of Canada in red. As you can see, there is still a significant percentage of certain provinces and territories that represents Aboriginal Canadians. Head Smashed and Buffalo Jump is seen here on the map at C6, and it's located in southern Alberta. This site represents 6,000 years of occupation of southern Alberta by different Indigenous Canadian groups. The Indigenous people would chase bison over these large cliffs, and then they would collect their carcasses. This exemplifies the traditional hunting practices of Indigenous Canadians, as well as symbolizes the lifestyle and values of these groups. Sagangawe is an island pictured here on the map at C5 that's just off the west coast of Canada. This island houses the remains of a village of Indigenous Haida people who are well known for their carved memorial totem poles which symbolize their spirituality. Today, totem poles are a trademark of Canadian culture and artistry, particularly along the west coast. Pictured here up top are the totem poles that are found on Sagangawe. The second picture depicts modern-day Canadian totem poles. Our final Canadian World Heritage Site is called Writing on Stone. This heritage site is one of the newest additions to the Canadian World Heritage Sites, so it's not pictured on the blue map we've been looking at. Designated in 2019, Writing on Stone is located in southern Alberta, as seen on the map here. Writing on Stone is a sacred site for the Indigenous Blackfoot people of Canada. It features engraved sandstone walls of rock that contain spiritual messages. The oldest engraving here dates back to 1050 BC. This site is a testimony to the Blackfoot spiritual practices and beliefs, and it's a site of continued significance for this group of Indigenous Canadians. This site also features rock structures called hoodoos, which are pictured on the next slide here. Thank you for watching.